Yeah, I think that the worst part about moving to Threads really was my Instagram handle and just people being able to see that. I was not expecting that. Mick, I know you felt the same thing. Frankly, it's just disgusting and filthy. Um,
I knew how to sew, so I thought Threads was going to be something different. Much to my surprise, not that much different than what I thought.
have you seen threads.com, which I'm enjoying,
I've
which
seen
now has a giant
Threadless, which
banner.
is like the dark website, I guess.
Yeah, I just like the idea that someday someone who owned threads.com woke up and they're like, why do we have so much traffic? Oh, and like at what
Yeah.
point do you switch your business model from whatever threads.com did to just advertisements? Because right now I
Mhm.
think it says something like, we are not a social media site.
Give it time.
Oh,
Oh,
so
Audrey, you
there's
didn't click on that, did you?
no, I did not. No, I was not searching what you were talking about. I know better than that, Ryan.
I did
I am
something
not on
poorly.
Threads.
You're not on Threads? No, there we
I am
go.
not on Threads. I
You're
don't have
unthreaded.
Instagram or Facebook, and I don't anticipate that will change anytime soon. So
Oh, see, that's you bring the privacy to this discussion. Where Mick and
we'll
I,
see. We'll
we
see how it
started in the
goes.
private world and now we're just OPM'd out there. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Who cares? We're all out there. Welcome everyone joining. My name is Ryan Kovar. This is Audra Streetman and Mick Baccio, and we are here for Coffee Talk with Serge. It's going to be 45, 60 minutes, give or take, how spicy we're feeling today. We're going to go over some humor, some news, talk about some deep dives, and something I feel pretty passionately about at the end of the show. So why don't we kick off with the news? Drew, roll clip.
All right. So Threads, that's what we're talking about.
Only Threads, all day, all long.
Yeah, in case you missed it, there is this new social media platform that's raising a lot of questions about social media in general. What's the future
Mastodon?
for Twitter and all the other apps that are out there like Mastodon and Blue
Hmm.
Sky? So basically, this all started earlier this month when Elon Musk announced a temporary rate limiting that would restrict the number of tweets users could see, blaming it on data scraping as the issue, the reason why they were implementing this. And of course, a lot of people were not very happy that they could only look at so many tweets per day. So, following up on that, just this past Wednesday, Mark Zuckerberg launched Threads, which is a microblogging app similar to Twitter, but this is actually linked to Instagram. Hence, why I don't have one, because I don't have an Instagram. Because you have to have an Instagram account to sign up for Threads. And if you decide you don't like Threads and you want to deactivate your profile on Threads, then you have to deactivate your Instagram account. And I think I read somewhere that they're working on like maybe trying to fix this because a lot of people were like iffy about that. Like, do I want to sign up in case I ever want to delete it? But there was a lot of success because Threads became the most rapidly downloaded app. It reached 100 million users within just the last 5 days or so since it was launched. But Twitter still has more users. Twitter has 237 daily users according to their latest data that they
You'd
released.
say that's a measuring contest between the two platforms?
It might be. It very well might be. Yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see, if Threads ends up surpassing Twitter in terms of users, if people like the platform better in terms of what it offers. I haven't been on it, so I'm curious, Ryan, what you think about navigating it. Is it better than Twitter in your opinion? Do you
Yeah.
like it more?
There's some immediate differences. One, in Twitter, you had to go find people. In Instagram, not a surprise, social media, very good at finding all the people you're already talking to. So it kind of pre-populated. Um,
Then and that's where the user base came from,
yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
if I build an app based on an existing user data set they already have, yeah, of course, it's going to be a lot of downloads to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
So I also, if I live in the EU, well, I guess Threads is not for me.
lots of
Well,
things.
yeah.
I mean, we
That
can't have really good cheese in America. So this is,
Well,
something.
and that it all ties into data privacy, which is our next story too, because Meta does collect a lot of data on its users. If you ever go through and look at exactly what types of analytics
True.
they cover in their privacy policy, it's pretty alarming to me anyway. So, I mean,
Yes.
Twitter collects
But
data.
Something I don't like about the threads is that you can't have a separate username.
Mhm.
So I did keep my Twitter. That was very much a work persona, and then Instagram was where I shared photos of my dogs and food and bicycling. And now theoretically, if I'm supposed to use Threads, then it's going to be linked, right? Like that's the same account, and it is harder to keep things, but that's not in the metaverse vision, is it? So
yeah, we'll see if that changes. If they think it would be beneficial to separate it, I hope they change it, because then maybe I would consider it. Maybe.
Yeah, there's some things I like about it right off the bat. Like it has 500 characters, which is enough, but not too many. You know, the UI is kind of crappy. You can't use Giphy yet, but those are all things. But it works.
But again, because you can't use Giphy, because does Meta own Giphy?
Well, you can use Giphy on Instagram, but you have to use it through their portal.
Right. So I imagine the same reason why Twitter, the rate limiting earlier. I mean, APIs cost money. Not to defend Meta and all this, but I think that, you know, it's a new platform. Until they figure out that disconnect, like you mentioned. If I don't have an Instagram account, I can't have a Threads account. If you want that to grow, you know, you're going to have to change that. Or if, like you originally both pointed out, if you just did this just to show the other guy that you could, good job, you did.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone else was set up to be able to pull this off, right? In terms of having, you know, the ability to create a platform that would handle this much traffic and
immediately all at once, right? And also have an impetus to do it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Like Apple could have done this and like, hey, look, all your iPhones are all connected now through this new iPhone app that if you use iMessage, you're connected. Well, and there's an instant base there.
The other thing too, like what's the difference between Twitter and Threads? And I would say probably the largest difference is content moderation, right? Because Elon Musk has made that his big thing, that he wants to protect freedom of speech and then also not prohibit any sort of, you know, commentary that would not be allowed on Meta. You know, whether or not it's considered hate speech or things like that. That's a whole discussion we can have. But, you know, I thought it was interesting. The Taliban basically said that they are staying on Twitter because Meta
ringing endorsement.
Intolerant.
And that's actually pretty shocking because you'd think they'd lean into Telegram. So
I mean, yeah, that they endorse Twitter. So because of Elon Musk's stance on freedom of speech is what he talks about. So that's a whole nother, I guess, difference between the two platforms.
It is incredible to me how much Twitter had taken hold for the cybersecurity community in terms of keeping up to date. I mean, it was by far and away for many, many years the fastest way to talk to your peers or find out information, breaking news, collecting it, synthesizing it, and kind of going through. We were talking the other day, we have .conf coming up next week, and there's a talk there about vulnerability management. Ryan Late and Dean Luxton are giving a talk on that. And originally they talked about how to use the cvetrends.com website that was pulling from the API of Twitter to see the traffic around hashtag CVEs. And now, of course, that's completely dead.
Yeah.
You know, and the question for me is, if we look at this from a cybersecurity point of view, why do I care about Twitter? If we put aside the privacy aspect and some of the things we've already talked about, it goes to that rapid dissemination of information very effectively from trusted, verified sources. So we're going to get the trusted and verified. Are we going to get people are we willing to move as a community into threat? I mean, Audra Streetman isn't, so who among us?
Well, I haven't said for sure. I think I'm just waiting to see how it evolves. But there's another issue. Go ahead.
The sharing of information through a wide dissemination of information, who is that to?
Right.
Because I would argue that there exists already trust communities and sharing groups where that information has already been passed well before you're going to see it on any kind of public forum. And I don't mean on the classified side. I mean those trust groups and those one-on-one interactions. Like
we've seen
there's other
already
mediums besides Twitter.
Yeah, but I will say, and maybe this is just with my news background because I was on an assignment desk for a while, and that was literally the source of news for local TV. If you're in a local TV newsroom, you get your news from Twitter, and that's where all of the public agencies, you know, police departments, any type of local agency posts to Twitter. They don't send out press releases anymore. They post to Twitter, and I think they'll probably have to work back on that. But even in emergencies, right, like the National Weather Service, I saw NWS Boulder's Twitter account. They actually had to tweet because there was a severe weather event in Boulder, Colorado, and they had to tweet like, hey, we're not able to monitor all of the tweets coming in, because that's how they track weather in real time from people on the ground. Like, hey, we're seeing golf ball hail at this intersection. Like, that's how they track it. And they weren't able to do that because of the rate limits. So I could see that really becoming
That's
an
the
issue.
delineation. Right.
Yeah, for public safety. But like then again, in cybersecurity, there's all these, secret squirrel groups where you hear about stuff before it even gets on Twitter, right? Like I can see that not really being an issue, but I do think from a public safety point of view, the impact with Twitter is going to be pretty severe, in my opinion. It could be
So
severe.
I think it's a separate conversation, but an interesting one we'll be glad to have any day is to your point, like, hey, when did Twitter, when did it become an official, we don't write a letter, we don't go in front of a podium, we'll tweet it out, and that's an official statement.
I think that was pretty much determined with Donald Trump last administration, right?
No,
I mean,
because I was there for a little
but
bit,
when
and
it
I don't
turned into
remember
like
us talking
NARA,
about it.
yeah, I mean, when you could tweet policy and it was de facto law.
But right, and did that go away with Twitter's credibility?
Well, and the other thing with verified accounts, when we lost that feature of verified accounts for trusted sources of news,
still verified accounts.
That's a whole other issue. So basically, everything's falling apart, and my confidence in the future of social media is very low. So
just social media.
Michael also just commented on LinkedIn that Seattle police used to have a per beat Twitter account where they actually just decommissioned it. And that's, a lot of police agencies have actually encrypted their radio communication. So in newsrooms, you can't listen to it anymore. You're very reliant on Twitter and what people on the ground are seeing and reporting and emailing. So
great point there, Michael. For anyone who's watching, feel free to comment, make fun of Mick. Yeah. Highly encourage that. He needs to be treated.
I don't hate Meta as much as either of you. I don't think Threads does anything. Like it'll be interesting if Threads. We should revisit this in a month and see if that user base has grown, if that disconnect has happened.
If I right now, when I look at it, account, like I use Blue Sky, which is pretty much exactly the same as Twitter 5 years ago.
Unhinged Twitter, yes.
Yeah, like 5 people on it, right? And then on the other side, you have the Threads, which is like, okay, this is pretty much exactly what you would assume. Like we're going to clone pretty much 90% of
what you want.
But there still isn't everything there, right? Like you can't do DMs, but that's not a horrible thing. And it's also like day 3 of a service, and I'm like, oh, this is crap.
So, like I mentioned earlier, I had an Instagram account, or I have one, and I followed mostly memes and raccoon pictures and cats in suits. So now all of my Threads accounts that I see are just brands that are talking to each other.
Right.
And so that's been my experience. And I think if you had a goofball Instagram account, like what about people that had Instagram accounts for their pets? Like what does their Threads account look like?
Yeah.
You should see the Surge versus Unit 42 Threads accounts. It's really pretty hardcore there.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Surge member David Bianco posted on, where did he post? I can't see. Well, anyway, he posted on somewhere about
the internet.
I think it's Twitch. Okay, that's Twitch. I'm sorry. I need glasses. I can't read what that said. He posted on Twitch saying, will any mass migration from Twitter to Threads be different from the mass migration from Twitter to Mastodon? Not that Mastodon failed, but it didn't take over Twitter's role either. I think, from the ability to host a platform like this, I think Meta is better position to do that than Mastodon, right? Because wasn't that one of the issues?
Start with the Instagram, like getting people who weren't technical to move over to Mastodon or Blue Sky was an advertising and marketing campaign. Where I logged on to Instagram one day and it just said, "Hey, it'd be cool.
You got this,
Threads."
Yep.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, with Mastodon, you have all the servers too. It can be kind of confusing. Like
it also does not shock me that
Mastodon is Marcus
Bianco is yelling about Mastodon. Oh, you should be decentralized. Remember my day.
The Articles of Confederation for social media.
All right. Well, speaking of social media and data collection and privacy, that kind of leads into our next story, which is about the US and the EU finally coming to an agreement. This was just yesterday on a long-awaited data sharing deal. So essentially, this, I guess you could say, resolves the dispute about U.S. intelligence agencies, their ability to gain access to data from EU residents. So people that live within the EU, they now have the ability to object whenever they believe that their personal information has been collected improperly by US intelligence agencies. I'm not sure how they would know when that's the case unless like they become part of an investigation. But basically, this agreement sets up an independent review body with judges and other, people that they've assigned to it to hear appeals about data collection. But, critics say that this doesn't go far enough and that the only way to really fix this issue is to actually change U.S. surveillance law, because under the current law, U.S. intelligence agencies can seek data about international users from companies for national security purposes. And so how do they designate what's a national security purpose? I can definitely see both sides of that argument. Go ahead, Mick.
If I say it is a national security purpose,
Then it is. Yeah.
I believe that is how the current.
That's how it works. Yeah.
You have to tweet it.
I need this, and then you have it. Like it's intelligence. I think it's really interesting. Like, awesome. It's finally done. This speaks to exactly what we were just talking about, where I believe it's the Digital Marketplace Act is why Threads is not in the EU currently. So, maybe a privacy law would be super awesome. I'm glad it's done, but I'm also curious. Yeah, what exactly is a national security purpose? And to your point about revamping U.S. intelligence laws, sure.
We revamped them. Like
In
the
theory.
good patriots we are, we revamped them.
Well,
Yes.
it's the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that basically says that they can access
Right. We
international.
just talked about 702.
Yeah.
We're fine. We put the fine in FISA. All right.
And the interesting thing too is a lot of this stems from like the Snowden leaks, because before that, people hadn't really considered how far-reaching U.S. intelligence agencies were with their data collection with international data. So
we knew. Some of us considered.
yeah. So, that's kind of where this all stems from. And, it'll be interesting to see if this comes up again, just as it rolls out, like how many people are going to appeal and say, hey, you're misusing my data. Because it seems like a pretty lengthy process to do that. How many people will determine that it's worth it? So.
Yeah, I mean, people will absolutely. But
yeah.
how much of it, and then they'll go through the effort. I mean, if it's on the books, those agencies will very carefully go through, and then at some point, someone will take a big black marker and go,
No, it's
Redacted.
not there actually.
with that.
Yep. It's all about the principle, right? It's the principle.
Speaking of principle,
But that's the thing. It's
Nick, I have to ask, could you stand up just a little bit here for a second? Let's just a little bit more. Let's see the full shirt there. Are you being dressed by David Bianco? Is that your designer today?
Yeah, I got it from a DB in the back. I think you can get them online. It's Etsy store.
Bianco.com.
With the
Yes.
Pyramid of Pain shirt, is that
Yeah,
also on there? Yeah.
Friends all day, Pyramid of Pain all night. The
Kill Chain's a different shirt.
Eric, that's if you're watching. Down with Mick shirt. Mick, or
That's a great shirt.
You got to admire there, Mick. That's David.
I think what I am super curious about, and I kind of like, not to sound dark on it, I'm hoping for a more positive outcome, is this. To your point about when people realize exactly what's happening with their data and who can see their data, when will the same kind of privacy and restrictions that you see in the EU be adopted in the US?
Yeah, and that'll kind of happen more gradually, right? Like there was that story about Massachusetts possibly enacting new privacy laws with cell phone data collection, right? I had that story somewhere.
Can't sell it.
Yeah, so the sale of that data. So I think it might be a state.
You can lease it.
thing.
You can lease it, okay,
People
but
always
not
think about the leasing.
buy it. You can't, but you can lease it. That's different.
Once it's audited, you can always return it.
Yep. All right. Moving on, because we have 4 news stories today. So the next one is MOVEit, because we are not done talking about MOVEit.
Some of us are.
Some of us are. On Friday, we actually learned about 3 new vulnerabilities. So we're now at 6 total vulnerabilities linked to the MOVEit file transfer software. And these latest vulnerabilities could allow an adversary to actually access or modify MOVEit database content, even shut down the software. So the initial vulnerability was exploited by Clop, which we've talked about, the ransomware group. They've been able to exfiltrate data from a number of companies. Each day we're still learning about new companies. Brett Callow over at MCSoft has done a great job of tracking all of the confirmed data compromised situations with a total of 271 organizations that are confirmed to have been impacted. That includes 27 US schools and data belonging to at least 17.7 million people. So, we're probably going to keep hearing about this for a long time, I imagine. Ryan, you have anything to add, or are you ready to move on to the next story?
Moving on.
Who do we file the class action against? Because, right, it's got to be filed eventually. Like, if you want your 1 year credit monitoring.
And that depends.
Be something we see more and more of as vulnerabilities come out. You're going to see more vulnerabilities come out that are related to the same software as more researchers look at it. And then I think especially, and I hate to say this out loud, but with generative AI, I think there's going to be more approaches where people start developing LLMs based on code bases and start looking at things. And I'm not saying that's easy, but I do think this is what we should be prepared for. When you have a major RCE, that's not usually the only thing there. And people just start, we saw this with Log4j, we're seeing it with MOVEit.
I think if you can go farther back than that, and you and I have had conversations, so we've talked about the concept of vulnerability mining, where there is one vulnerability and I use an existing code base that I perhaps may have trained on generative AI to find more and more vulnerabilities in that specific area. You look at the Hafnium group, and the speculation there was that there were so many exchange exploits, one right after the other, and there were small variations that the only way to do that is to keep replicating that code base quickly.
Yeah, and the great news there, the mitigation was just obviously upgrade to, Office 365. So
exactly. There you
but
go.
How would I print?
We'll get to that. I also wanted to point out too, because Clop has now exploited 0 days in several different file transfer services, right? We had Excellion, we had now there's a new one that I wanted to point out. I don't know if Clop is exploiting this, but Asset Note put out a report looking at Citrix share file. They found a critical pre-authentication RCE vulnerability. So just like what we're talking about, that could be used for the same purposes. So just something to keep an eye out for, and just in general, any type of file transfer software, something to monitor, because it's been exploited time and again. But Mick, I wanted to ask you a bit about this too, because it looks to me like with the Clop exploiting of these vulnerabilities with MOVEit, that there hasn't been any encryption. This is more of a data exfil and then public posting.
That's it, right?
Yeah,
and it makes me think you didn't finish, right?
Or is it necessary?
Well, if you want to get paid, it usually is.
You think?
How many people? I don't think the organizations that have been impacted have done anything other than like, okay, you got our data, now what?
Right.
I imagine we're not privy to those conversations about paying for deletion and exfiltration, but beyond like, hey, we exfiltrated your data, I don't see a lot of people buying it. I don't see, the conjunction with ransomware and exfiltration that we see with other ransomware groups. And perhaps that's either an intended action or just, hey, we had this thing and we didn't carry out the next phase, or to sell that existing data to access brokers. But
yeah, I kind of think it ties into our research with Surge, not to like shamelessly self-promote, but we did,
measure shamelessly self-promote.
But we did analyze. Shannon Davis analyzed, ransomware encryption speed across a whole bunch of different ransomware families, and it can take several hours to encrypt, a certain amount of data. And so, if you're trying to just spray and pray and hit as many companies as possible, you could probably just accomplish what you're trying to do. If you're looking at scale, right, then it might make more sense to just exfiltrate and then hope someone will pay anyway. So,
but if I don't have to stop working, then you're just an annoyance. If you do not impact operations.
Yeah. Well, what about these lawsuits? Are companies considering that when they make decisions on, what would be the incentive to pay, right?
They are. Regulatory and compliance are, right? If they go through and they find out that, if you look at SolarWinds, if you look at, what was the other one that was in the news?
Uber's a bad example.
Uber and SolarWinds are two examples where, regulatory and federal law enforcement went after company officers, right? And you can argue, the semantics, but at the end of the day, they did go after people. And that is going to motivate one way or the other Whether that's just more now we're going to have shell companies like, oh, well, that wasn't our IT, that was,
That's the thing. Like here at Mick LLC, we get sued all the time.
yeah.
Yep.
Let's move it on along.
Yep, moving on. So we have Apple. If you use an iPhone or an iPad, you'll want to definitely make sure you update to the latest software version. This is 16.5.1a. That's the latest version. So yesterday, Apple rolled out a rapid response security update to address zero-day attacks that exploit a flaw in WebKit, which is the browser engine that a bunch of apps use, like Safari and Mail and App Store. So obviously concerning when you hear about zero-day and iOS. But there is an update that you hopefully went through last night automatically, but worth checking just in case.
I'll check my Pixel. Seems fine. So,
well, I can't. We're not going to go into that, right? Yeah, if you got an iPhone, update your iPhone. Shout out to Apple's security team. Memory's hard. So.
Yeah, so worth mentioning because, you definitely don't want that actively exploited. So,
well, there's more than one iPhone user out there, I hope, in the audience.
Yes. All right. Well, we got to talk about Conf because we are less than a week away, which is pretty crazy, from Conf 23. And I think we have a graphic with all of our events that we have planned at Conf. So this is July 17th through the 21st in Las Vegas. And we are going to be doing a couple, not one, but two Coffee Talk live streams. And this will be on the Splunk live stream for .conf. Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Pacific, Thursdays at noon. And we'll be talking about everything happening at Conf and all the events, all the sessions that we have coming up. And then, Mick, do you want to talk about your panel coming up on Wednesday?
Is it Wednesday? I guess it is. Sure.
Yeah, Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
8 days. Hope you're ready.
Yeah. I'm super looking forward to it. The days that kind of all blend together. Ryan, I think you're going to join me, Paul Kurtz and Sydney Howard. We're all going to kind of hang out for about a half hour or so and talk about Blue Nomicon, the essays inside of it. And I'm really looking forward to it. Sydney Howard is one of our threat hunters here at Splunk who just does all things threat hunting in purple. And her essay on law bins, I'm waiting to see us old timers try and keep up with the new technical terms like lol. But it's been a great time. And then after, there will be a Q&A and book signing. So if you are at Conf next week, be sure to stop by and get a book if you haven't already.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, and then we have a whole bunch of sessions featuring Surge members, which we have listed there. So a lot happening next week. It's going to be a really fun time. I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, and our newsletter. That's the next graphic that we want to make sure everyone is aware that we do have a newsletter at Surge. We release it every quarter.
But most importantly, Audra, that's how we're paid.
Yes, this is a very important metric.
SarahMcLaughlin.mp4. Sign up for the newsletter so that we can continue.
Oh, not too much. We're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Looking at bad wombats.
I don't want the YouTube moderators to come at us. Well, come at me, bro.
Yeah, so you can just go to splunk.com/surge and sign up for our alerts, and you'll start getting the newsletter. With that, we have a 60-second charity challenge that we want to get to. So go ahead and roll a clip for that.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-Second Charity Challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
All right. So the challenge today is about the Defense Policy Bill, and I believe this is part of the National Defense Authorization Act, which the House is expected to take up this week. This is an $886 billion bill by the Armed Services Committee that was passed by the Armed Services Committee. And we talked a little bit about this last week, about how the DoD is, this would propose the DoD studies creating a 7th cyber-specific military branch. That's one part of that bill. I don't know, Mick, is there anything else worth pointing out in that bill that you've read? Aside from
honest, we can spend the next hour or so talking about the last minute amendments. Or like, hey, we should do this too. Oh, this would be a great idea. It's kind of cyber related. Like there are so many last minute things that folks are trying to add in. I just want to see it pass and come out hopefully in a couple days. So I thought it would be a good idea if we I've got an idea too.
Yeah, so I guess that's the challenge. What Ryan, were you prepared for this at all, or are you completely?
I was, for those who don't know, I'm currently in San Francisco. I'll be preparing for my keynote later today, and I was in the plane, in a 45-minute late plane, so I missed the normal prep for this. So this is all new, but boy howdy, do I have some ideas.
Oh, you do? Okay,
That's
good. So you're not just
exactly. If
complete
you can
card.
add an amendment to the current
Yeah.
National Defense Authorization Act, what would it be? Right? Like, I can't believe Audra said this is a good idea. What's our
Well-
charity today?
Oh, right. So our charity today is the Malala Fund, because tomorrow is Malala Day. So this is a fund that works to make sure that girls all over the world are able to go to school and learn, helping more than 130 million girls who are currently out of school today. So that is what that charity is aimed at helping with. So that is the charity. And Mick, do you want to go first so Ryan can try to come up with his idea in the meantime?
No, I'm going to go first.
You
so that
are? Okay.
saying that it's copying, because that's how bold I am and decisive.
All right.
Here
Well,
we go.
then
Line up.
let's go. Ryan,
right.
you go for it.
So one of the things I'm really passionate about that I don't believe that we've ever successfully done in the United States around cybersecurity and the US government is actually defend the United States from cybersecurity attacks. And of course, there, what I'm referring to is not our ability to defend defense industrial base or ability to defend the United States federal services or state and local government, but the actual companies and citizens within the United States. I don't believe that we have a clear enough mandate from the Department of Defense to do that. I don't think they've gone far enough with this. I don't think we provide enough guidance or regulatory or compliance for things like IoT, for citizens' data, and actually just defending organizations against cyber attacks outside of the US borders. Why are we not going after Russia with all the things that we can regarding this? It is a different domain, but it's something I would like to see put into and enshrined in law so that we actually feel like people are defended. Because right now, if I was a company, if I was a CISO, I would feel like we're being left out to dry. You know, if you have an oil tanker in the Persian Gulf, you know the US Navy is going to come. But if you're doing retail online, you're screwed.
Oh my gosh, Ryan, that might be one of your best responses despite not having any time to prepare.
There we go. You just need
You're
to
spot on.
right here.
All right, Mick, no pressure.
Sure. So if I was adding a last minute amendment, I guess I would give the DoD the authorization to pretty much take over a company. If you fail at your cybersecurity, when you look at something like the Air Transportation Safety and System Stabilization Act back in 2001 after the plane crash, so basically the government took over, hey, we need to keep this running. If you look at 2008, when the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act 2008 created TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. So what I would do here is create a Distressed Enterprise Relief Program, DERP. And so what would happen is if your company was breached, DERP would come in and assume control of that company until its security met the DoD standards. Because as much as we knock DoD, there is a reason they do what they do, and they have standards that are in place. So if you don't pass your audit, you'll become a DERP. DoD will take over until your network is back online and secure.
Oh my gosh. Did you just come up with that today, or has this been brewing like for a while?
He's always been a derp.
Like 10 minutes ago.
All right. Well, I really hope people watching have an opinion, because that's really tough to decide who won that, who had the better argument. Is it that we need to better secure IoT, protect data, defend U.S. companies, or do we need to take over U.S. companies? Like
Either way, Mick and I are proposing a socialist Stalinist state. And it'll be a very aggressive cyber socialist utopia.
Yeah, DERP is a little bit it's pretty aggressive, Mick. I mean, the feasibility of that. How would companies respond? Or would they be thankful for the help?
They will be very thankful.
So basically you have like two veterans who are advocating.
Saying the choice comes down to increase the authority of the DoD or increase the authority of the DoD. You know that Mick worked in the DoD.
Yeah, we both came from DoD, so which essentially is this socialist utopia. Now, granted, some utopias are more equal than others.
Listen, Conrad, you have your bread and your aspirin. Calm down.
I had my free medicine, all right? I got to see the world.
You had to retire at 38 if you'd stayed in. It would have been fine.
Right?
Okay, well, I know Daniel's watching because he says he likes derp. So, Daniel, do you have an opinion
Thank
on
you,
whether or not Mick or Ryan should win? Because I feel like they both did a really good job, but I don't know. I think
If I
derp.
lose, that will mean the best effort I've ever had is not even as good as Mick's. Not best effort.
I mean, derp is pretty amazing.
Distressed enterprise. That's right.
I mean, it's really memorable. Cyber socialist utopia. James, do you have an opinion between Mick and Ryan?
CISA.
Who should win, or should they both
The
lose?
CISA. There we go.
Because
It's our new version of CISA. Yeah, oh, you mean CISA? No, we mean CISA.
It's a with a U at the end.
Yeah, it's a big H. So,
Daniel can't choose either. Should we say both of you win or both of you lose?
Drew has offered to pay. He said they both win, which he never votes for me. So this is stunning.
Oh, all
Voice
right.
of God. Thank you, Drew. So the true winner here is CSUH.
Wait,
That's
what?
fair. All right, it has to be a tie.
Cyber
That's fair.
Socialist Utopia.
Oh, I was like, what? So many acronyms, but yeah.
Acronyms.
Chris says both of you lose. So,
Well,
and
I don't know. I think
Loser.
Derp
So,
was the
don't
winner.
care about Chris. Hard but fair.
all right. All right. Well, now that we have derp to think about for the rest of the day, let's move on to our deep dive. And I think we have a clip for that as well.
And now we talk about things that just happen to be on our minds with who's ever here, because we made this up before I knew who'd accept my meeting invite.
Surprise, Ryan. We're talking about printers, your favorite topic.
That's what you get.
Yes. So this is actually really kind of funny. The Washington Post has this whole series they're doing this week, and it's this week only, where they're zeroing in on printers and how much they suck.
Because the DoD should take over HP and destroy their printer business.
Yeah.
Prevent attacks of the printer vector.
Yeah, so they have all these articles. I think they have like at least 4 articles that are up already. Why don't we have paperless offices? Why do people still use printers? You can go to those.
Terrified a big printer because that like they're just going to wake up one day and like $10 million worth of ink is just going to have like their name with like murder scrolled onto their wall. It's gonna be horrible.
Well, apparently printers can also read your documents sometimes, and that's another privacy concern. So what do you do about that? I mean, you can also break them at those.
Experts have been terrified of big printer for a while because they put the micro dots on there to find out where the printer paper and printer ink came from. So, I mean, if you support printers, you support kidnappers.
So, but your printing service can potentially access your documents. Okay. So you're saying this third party that I'm using for things can do third party stuff with my things.
Right.
But how is that different than anything else?
But how aware are people of their printer privacy, right?
If you put your documents in the cloud, you're more aware than others.
Well,
we recently had some elderly guests at our house, and they were like, "Oh, we'd love to print our boarding pass tickets." Yes, and it was Mick. And he wanted to print his boarding pass, and we were like, "Oh, we haven't had a printer since Ryan threw it through the window." True story. And they were like, "How do you live without a printer?" I was like, "How do you live with one?"
It's a ground floor
like
window.
having a predator in your house under your table, just waiting to cause you pain.
Yeah. So I have a printer, but I use it for scanning. Do you not use scanning, Ryan, or do you have like a designated scanner that does not print?
I have a designated scanner that does not print. It's called my phone.
Yeah. I guess we're just too young and hip for you, Audra, with our technology.
I use a scanner. Maybe I'm old school.
No, this is Audra we're talking about here. Do you have a Razor, like a flip with like no SIM card? It's just completely
my burner phone.
What is it? The old school candy bar phone?
Yeah, I'm just like a burner phone? You just mean a phone. I'm telling you, people in the audience, it's so hard to get a hold of Audra. Like every day, it's a new phone
this
number.
Nokia hasn't broken in 32 years.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So in my opinion, I think printing and papers are still here because it is not a level playing field across the United States.
Correct.
Like we are not in a place where everyone, Audra, you live in a place where there's a lot of wood behind you. Like Could your local town go paperless? Could
You say
mine?
that, but
There's a whole store for logs where I live, so they would go out of business.
Hey,
there's countries in Africa especially that have gone completely mobile though. I mean, there is no paper. Everything, payment, mortgage, bills with little Nokias and better.
and I think that infrastructure has been set up to support it, right? Whereas here in the United States, I think, we live in cities, and the farther out you go, it just gets more and more rural. And hey, look, I don't have a scanner.
Have we thought
So-
about the DoD setting up the ability to do printing and scanning for the citizens?
Sure. I think, what would we call that one? Because it'd be a rural, assistance.
There we go. Yeah, it's going badly. Yeah, it's, printers in the new world, they're little computers. They are everywhere. It was fascinating when I was in the Navy many years ago. One of my first jobs was running Cat5 cable and then removing Cat5 cable and replacing it with fiber, because someone determined that there was a threat of tapping Cat5 cables but not fiber. And so we had to run fiber cables between the printer and the wall for every printer on the aircraft carrier. And we had to install like $800 printer fiber cards to be able to receive this. So it couldn't be tapped. And this whole time I'm going, you're worried about tapping the transmissions of the thing that's physically printing the paper.
But as someone who has a background a little in like those tapping things, that's not how cables work.
Listen, you just put a BNC on there, the token falls out, you run Wireshark on the token, and you extract the SAM, and then you run IDA Pro and Gidra on the SAM that you extracted from the token that fell out of the BNC, and that's
on the ship that I'm on that no one has access. Oh.
Yeah. The threat model there, I think, was contractor money.
But so like printing is still here, right? So I think the idea of moving completely to a paperless system, your ecosystem has to support that, and I don't think ours does. I would go even farther. Like, is faxing still a thing? Did we do away with
yes,
faxing?
it is. I had to go to.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah, well, because I had a whole conversation with the people at UPS about faxing, and because it's supposedly more secure.
Yeah, I love when people say that, because every organization that receives a fax today does not have a fax machine on the other side. They have an email server with a socket set up to receive the fax and turn it into a PDF that's then emailed internally.
And here's the thing, if you're trying to fax like sensitive medical documents, because a lot of places out there will only accept medical documents via fax, you can't email it, you can't scan it. I think it's actually less secure to go to UPS and hand over your document with your social security number on it to the person at UPS. Like, hey, can you scan this for me? And please don't look at it. Like, I don't know. There is a person in between you and the place. I don't know. To me,
you
it doesn't
can't
make
stay
sense.
at this hotel unless you let me photocopy your passport. Who's
Sorry,
there?
I can hear you, Italy. That
Right?
takes your passport.
So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea to have to fax, because no one has a fax machine. So you have to go to UPS if you have to fax.
And
Right?
I think there are several people in the PRC and Russia and in Iran with
Fair.
fax machines.
I have sent a fax by downloading a system or a tool that will replicate fax transmissions to send somewhere else, that will then receive it and then send it to an email. And the whole time I'm going, I guess this could have been me. I mean, it's just, it definitely removes the, the transmission, yeah.
Right.
Fax
So
machines,
like, I think
printers, fax machines, they're pretty much the same for me. Buying
I
a
get
house,
it.
not fun.
I get the hate on printers, right? I just don't think but look at where we are and where we've been short time ago. It was like just last week I saw Ryan hitting it with an Allen wrench. I just print in color. I don't understand. But faxing, let's get rid of faxes. Because to both of your points, there's absolutely no security value. I think there's actually a downgrade, because every fax machine that I have seen in an office is just generally by the printer, where anyone walks by and picks up your fax.
Grab that for you.
Okay, but listen to this. So William just posted in the chat on LinkedIn that he ran a project to remove faxing technology from a large major bank, found out that millions of pages of faxes were being sent, and it had a single authentication method for some of the most sensitive data, so no password in order to do that. So is it really that much more secure than sending an email?
I'm just worried that big fax is going to come for all three of us. So, audience, if we are not here next week,
So
Yeah,
what you
fax.
do is just take a piece of black paper and make it on a loop, and then you fax it to them, and it'll print out and use up all their toner, and then they can't find you. See,
into the email. This is
just
Yeah.
one long page. That's it. That's how you get back a big fax. So
I think with
we're
that
healthy.
we should close off our big faxing day. 'Cause we have a big faxing week coming up.
Yes, we do. It's going to be fun.
So yeah, we're going to be at Conf. What is that? In 6 days.
6 days, yeah. We start on Monday evening. Boss of the Sock, 8th Boss of the Sock, which will be fun. Keynotes are streamed, and then for those of you who aren't attending, they will be releasing the technical sessions throughout the week, throughout the next couple months. I'm really excited for the Dr. Fetterman session with David Bianco. I'll be pinch hitting for him once again, and yeah, I think people should be excited. It'll be great. There's some good stuff coming on.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good time. I think I'm looking forward to Tony and Josh.
Yeah.
Their talk
Internal
about
Sock, they have a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Just
I
like a
actually
day in the
just-
life of Spunkers.
I just found it. So the week of July 24th is when Conf Online launches, and they'll have the keynotes available, breakout sessions for all registered attendees. So yeah, that's when that'll become available. So with that, we'll see you, I guess, in our next coffee talk at Conf.
Or come out to the desert and hang out.
There we go.
Yeah,
Till
it's not
then,
too late.
Take
Still
us away,
register.
Drew.
Surge.